Hey guys, I'm Kate, welcome back to my channel, and today is going to be a long one. This video is going to be somewhat of a requested topic. While I was actually drafting this chat a few weeks ago at this point, I received a comment asking me to go over my past projects, my current projects, what the status even was on a lot of them, and my good friend Brooke Passsmore actually recommended that I do this months ago. I got some wine, let's chat. To best answer this question, I also have some visual representation for you, as well as I am going to make a chart as we're talking, covering the first draft, second draft, if it's in the beta stage, the third draft, more betas, etc. And let's just go over this while attempting to answer the question, why am I not published yet? Why haven't I published anything? What's up? In this conversation, I also want to chat about why I didn't do this video way back when Brooke recommended it. Some of the concerns and criticisms I've received regarding my admittedly weird process. I also want to talk about a broad fear of failure, my own lack of skills or like where my skill set is at, and also some business and like marketing plans intermixed and jumbled in with all of that. So yes, again, it's gonna be a long one, y'all. Let me take you way back to when I was a young warthog. That was a terrible Lion King reference that my family always makes. Jesus. So I've participated in NaNoWriMo starting in either 7th or 8th grade, and I also wrote stories in college. Those university years were the first time that I ever typed the end on a first draft. So all of my years spent from 7th grade to like probably junior year of college, never typed the end, never made it past the first draft stage. It wasn't until either my junior or senior year that I was like, I have done it, I have succeeded, yes. And then the other thing to note is that the first time I ever fully revised a novel twice and got alpha feedback on it was the story I started my channel with, adorably titled First. It's a new adult superhero story. I've talked about this before, not really a genre that traditional publishing wants. I have thought about this often, coming back to it now that I'm a better writer than I was then, because I still love the story and I still love the characters, and I think this could be really, really cool in the indie publishing space. But let's go ahead and fill out the chart for that with a pen. We'll do red because it was my first one, and we're gonna make it a rainbow because why not? I have, like, that's my channel, it's fine. So, in a superhero, made it all the way to second, betas, and third. Arguably betas again, but we're gonna stop it here. I'm gonna use betas and alphas interchangeably here, just like I'm not gonna put 0 draft on here, even though you could technically include that over here. My process has changed over the years, and it also changes based off of the project. So first, second betas, third betas is the closest to encapsulating what I do. So I mentioned this a lot lately, but one of the things I recently learned that really gave me an aha moment was that I can only really work on 3 projects at any one time with consistency. And by that I mean I can spend an hour or 2 each day working on one project, then shift over to another, and then another. But I can't handle 4 projects. And I've talked in a different video about how I juggle and determine projects, but the basic rules are: 1, none of the projects can be in the same genre, and 2, not in the same point of view or vibe, voice, whatever. So currently I'm working on Meridian Maps number 3, a young adult fantasy adventure story told in 3rd person, limited to Annalisa. Then I'm also working on Murder Mystery Tennessee, which is an adult mystery and it's told in 1st person. And then finally I'm working on romance short stories told in 3rd person. Okay, so very different. You get what I'm saying. And that means that all of the projects that I have that I worked on up to a certain point that are not those 3 projects are back burner projects for me right now. The goal is that all projects are eventually back burner projects in some capacity, because I think it's so important to give yourself 2 months rest between any given draft. So in those 2 months, that story becomes a back burner project. Like, my goal is to finish Murder Mystery Tennessee and also Meridian Maps number 3 by the end of June, but for Murder Mystery Tennessee, that rest will be with beta readers, while Meridian Maps number 3 will be just generally rested. Back burnered. What? Since I'm working on both of these right now. Murder Mystery Tennessee has had its 0 draft, its 1st draft, and its 2nd draft, and then soon it will go to betas. Meridian Maps number 3 is simply in the 1st draft stage. So then the question is, what happens after June? Which is basically that I go to my back burner projects and I pull 2 of them forward, maybe 3 if I want to take a break from the romance short stories. And then that becomes my new rotation of 3 projects. Now, for sure, that will include Meridian Maps number 4. And I have learned over the past year that it probably takes me about 3 months to do the 0 draft of these, if I'm being realistic, and just because series are hard. Fun, but hard. It's just all the moving parts and the overarching plot structures and character arcs and knowing when I said a certain thing when and when I hinted to something and oh. And also, I just don't want to repeat myself in terms of the character arcs, but also just like the heists that are pulled or the creatures that we meet or anything like that. So it's really testing me as a writer in a way that I've never had before because I've never attempted a sequel before. So it's just been so fun, and it's a planned 5-book series. So I really just want every single book to matter. Yeah, it just needs to matter and it needs to be fresh and new. So while we're talking about Meridian Maps, let me put the other 2 on here. Meridian Maps number 2, I also just 0 drafted or first drafted. Meridian Maps number 1, however, went through the first draft, the second draft, the betas, and the 3rd draft stage. All the way. And while we're talking about Meridian Maps, let's introduce this sort of fear of failure. Another good friend of mine, Becca C has chatted with me about how my potential jumping around of stories and not wanting to publish anything stems from a fear of failing. And I absolutely think that that is part of it. Because Meridian Maps, the first one, is done. It's done. It's been through multiple revisions. I even chronicled the beta reader process while I was on my super mega solo road trip in 2018. This is the copy of the first Meridian Maps book that I printed out. By the way, it's been worked on and tinkered with, and yet I did not decide to publish it yet. And while you can unpublish things or edit things after the fact as an indie author, which I will link down below both the Courtney Project and Becca C. Smith's own videos about this topic, there is a lot of fear of not getting it right in the first place, because I've never published before. There's so much to learn, and you really only can learn certain things by doing it, by publishing, but now I have theoretically 30,000 eyes on something. And if I do fail, that's a lot of eyes. So many eyes. A lot of eyes that I never expected. And we're going to talk about audience and marketing in some of my business decisions in a little bit, but I want to backtrack just a tad more because I did also query the first Meridian Maps book. I documented that process too. It is important, however, to note that I only queried about 8 agents or so, and I never did a second round of things. I did not ever update my query, even though I prepared a whole spreadsheet and had researched enough to do more. I'll link a video down below where I cover the topic more in depth on my decision to stop querying that book and why I decided that I wanted to indie publish it instead. But basically it goes back to it being a 5-book series. Series in YA have started to become harder and harder to sell, for one, but mainly I just don't trust the traditional publishing world because, you know, the stars could align for the first book and maybe even the second book, but not the rest, and maybe the first one doesn't even sell enough or whatever, and then that series dies for all intents and purposes. And we've seen that happen before, and getting a book published traditionally often feels like finding a unicorn, but I guess what I'm saying is that getting a series published, a 5-book series published, feels like finding 10 unicorns. And I knew some of that before I started querying. I wrote the first book to be self-contained while still allowing the freedom of a series to be explored. Eventually I realized, for my own sanity, because I've always wanted to be both traditionally published and indie published, if I can any say in the matter, you know, this would just be one of those things that's better for me to indie publish, where I could guarantee that I could tell that story in full. So moving forward, my strategy with wanting to be a hybrid author has always been that if it's a self-contained novel, if it is a standalone book, I would try the traditional route. Realizing this has been great in a lot of ways because it's also forced me to go back and confirm that I do think this whole story does need 5 books. And it does. So it wasn't a loss at all to go through any of that. I think I gained a lot of experience in trying to write query letters and just knowing what to look for in agents and publishers and understanding more of that really weird world that often feels quite secretive. All that said though, I found that with this audience, sometimes that nuance gets lost, which then adds to the fear. Lindsay Puckett has made a really great video, I will link that down below too, on public failure within AuthorTube specifically regarding querying. In essence, I did fail my initial goal. I did not get an agent for the Meridian maps. You know, that story is not going to be traditionally published like I originally thought I wanted. So I failed. And that's something that, you know, amongst the author tubers that I know has been the hardest part to talk about on this sort of platform, to say I just wasn't ready to write that book, or I queried and didn't get an agent, or even seeing people who are doing self-publishing and making and watching them make mistakes, whether that's monetarily or in the production of the book or getting the right copy of the book to readers. It's a lot. And so there is a very real fear there for me. So, okay, let's go ahead and forward track a little bit. Because once I realized I wanted to self-publish the Meridian Maps books, that opened up an entirely different can of worms. In traditional publishing, the advice is to only ever write the first book in a series. Query it, and then if that doesn't work out, you just move on. Like, there's zero point in writing the rest of the series if you never sell the first book, right? But now I'm left writing all 5 books because I am the only decider on if this series does or doesn't get published. Whether anyone reads them is an entirely different conversation. Before this series, like I said, I'd never written a sequel before, but just to say, I did not know what the hell I was doing. Arguably on book 3, about to be on book 4, I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. So with this new freedom, I decided I wanted to zero draft my way through the entirety of the series in order to flesh out all of the arcs, add hints to the first book, the second book, the third book, whatever I needed to do in order to make this story as comprehensive, as full, as alive, and incredible as I possibly can. Now, not everyone needs to do this, but I am also a discovery writer, hence all of these zero drafts. I often don't find out things about books, characters, the setting, whatever, until I'm writing them. I stumble upon it. And that is a very scary thought when you're thinking about 5 books and all of the potential plot holes that could come from doing it that way. And I'm not going to revisit Meridian Maps #1, despite it being all the way out here, until I am done with Meridian Maps 4 and 5, like until they get added to this list. If I'm going by my estimated 3-month plan, that means I really won't touch Meridian Maps #1 again until early 2021. A great plus side I'm finding, as I'm over halfway through with the series, holy shit, wow, I didn't even think about that, but I hit over the halfway point in number 3, so I'm halfway done with the series. Holy shit. Well, the zero draft of the series. The great thing is that I don't think there will be any huge changes that I will have to make to the first book, which I'm very happy about. There will be a lot of little changes that I will need to make, but not any huge changes. And that's really nice. A relief. That's the way I should say it. Okay, so during this whole time, I'm also working on Project Purple. It's pink. It's fine. And also Project Death. Both of these are standalone novels, Project Purple being a YA contemporary and Project Death being a YA fantasy. Both of them fall under my category of being books that I would like to query as they are standalone, all-encompassing. Yes. Now, Project Purple has gone through multiple drafts. It has had the first round of alphas and betas, and then I revised the draft again. So it is all the way out here, and then I put it on the back burner. It's been there longer than the 2 months. The next step would be for me to reread it, double check that the scenes I added in from the last draft are solid, and then have another round of alphas and betas. Ideally, after that would be querying, unless of course the alpha and beta feedback suggested that I needed to do another revision and then repeat the process there. Yeah, so there's kind of like, at some point there's a loop until you have the, okay, I'm good, and then you move on again. Project Death, however, is in like its second draft, kind of. I had an aha about this one. I wrote a character that's the prince, and what was actually happening was that I had a project way back when that I'm not even going to include on here because I never actually finished the first draft. I just sort of had it as a concept, roughly outlined, yeah. But the prince character in Project Death that I wrote in, I think is because I pulled something from there and merged it in. I love the character so much, but he's not right for Project Death, and he's getting in the way, frankly. So he's a character that's going to be completely axed from the novel. Rip that character. Poor prince, goodbye. forever. The story's gonna be a lot stronger for having done that, but I haven't done it yet. I haven't written it yet. Now, in this time since starting my channel, I also wrote an adult science fiction story about an alien zoo, which only really made it to the first draft because I was not skilled enough, though I love the concept and I absolutely will revisit it at some point because I freaking love it. I love the characters and I'm mad that I'm not good enough at it yet, but I'm gonna be someday. And then my Scooby-Doo meets Princess Bride story, which I'm also going to count as first draft when really what's happened is it's just had multiple overhaul drafts. It's had a script written for it. It is, again, a great concept. And I had another aha moment for that too, in the way that the narration needed to be, because I had been trying to jump between 7 point of view characters. I'm not skilled enough for that. And there's a debate to be had there about if readers would actually enjoy 7 different point of view characters. But I had a solution. I have the narrator now and it's fucking awesome. It's gonna be great. I cannot wait to eventually move this from the back burner up here so that I can work on it because it'll help so much. Anyways, it's important to note here that I needed these failures to learn and to grow. But since we're chatting about skill set, I want to dive in a little bit deeper because that is also a huge reason that I haven't published yet. So we have fear. Let's talk about skill sets. I've always said that once you're able to write the end on a first draft, you have unlocked that as a skill. Ever since that time, I have been able to finish my first drafts, or I've been able to figure out and know for certain that it's just not working and I've stopped it, and it hasn't been because I just can't finish something. No, I have gained a knowledge, the skill set has unlocked. The light bulb moment has been had, yes. So I know I can finish a first draft. I can reread it, I can revise it, I can even write the second draft. I've also had alpha readers and beta readers before, as evidenced by my little graph here. But because so few projects have gotten to that 4th draft, 5th draft stage, because that's just so much time put in, I'm just not as good at it yet. Inevitably, that makes it harder and that makes stuff take longer when you are trying to like get up to that stage. So then the question is, how do you get better? By building multiple projects up to that stage and eventually surpassing that. You fail, you learn, you fail some more, you keep trying, and then you go from there. And this is also why I've been working on short stories a lot lately. It's a lot easier to learn revision skills when you have just less words that you need to revise. This does not help me necessarily on like huge plot issues. It doesn't necessarily help me on huge character arcs, but it does help me get to a point of line edits and revision and feeling confident and the fact that I have made this short story as good as I possibly can. And I'm hoping that as I work on this, those skills and that confidence will transfer. So I'm going to put my short stories and bring them, oh, this is so hard at this angle, all the way over here. Ta-da! Then I also have some romance novellas that are just before the beta stage. So in this time since I started my channel, I've also worked on a full new adult romance story. I say full, like a novel that's in its 2nd draft as well. And I'm not going to include it on here, but I have written the 0 draft of another YA contemporary. I talked in that vlog, in my 24-hour write-a-thon vlog when I was doing that, a little bit about my strategy regarding YA contemporaries and how I'd like to query/publish regarding there, so I'll link that down below as well. During other Write Anything days, I've also fully outlined projects. And then my co-writer and I are still on this same new adult contemporary book that we've written together. And that one is on its 4th draft or so we're gonna call that co-written. We have gotten feedback on that as well, but we're due for another round. So I'm gonna see, again, this is one of those weird ones. I'm gonna put it at 3rd, which you can't tell because now there's so many stuff. I'm gonna put it at 3rd, but really it's closer to 4th or 5th. We just have not gotten feedback on it a second time yet. We do have some betas lined up though, so it's gonna happen soon-ish, hopefully within 2020. Now, a point to be said here, because it takes up an entire page, is that this is a lot. Yes, and 100% it could be argued that if I had focused on a single project during this time, during the 3 years that I have had my channel, or 3.5 or whatever it is, could I have published? Disregarding my fear of failure and disregarding my current skill set, could I have done it? Probably. Plenty of people in the same amount of time, not just on AuthorTube, but like everywhere have done that sort of thing. But here's the thing, it is okay that I haven't. This is not a zero-sum game. Just because I haven't published something since starting my channel does not make me a failure in capital letters. Even though sometimes it feels like that, sometimes I get comments saying that. It's such a small subset of people, but I still read them, you know? My skin has also really thickened in the process of having an AuthorTube channel and like putting myself out there. So this has been a huge benefit that's going to help me, I think, in the long run of my publishing career. Something that I could have never expected, because inevitably people are going to dislike the books that I put out there when I do publish. And that's fine because I'm used to people just disliking me in general now. Now we need to get into the marketing and business of it all. One of the things I love about writing is that it is a career with no age limit to it. Plenty of authors didn't start writing or publishing their first books until their 50s or 60s or even their 70s. Plenty of authors didn't find success until their 10th novel or whatever. And if you fail and you don't sell as well as you expected, which I will link down below a video where Alexa Dunn has talked about that, this is one of the few careers where you can just completely start over if you're willing to use a different pen name. Take all that you've learned, write under a different name, and try again. There's something really beautiful in that. And there's also reasons to use different pen names in general. This is debatable if you want to do this. Again, my good friend Becca C has a much different viewpoint on this than I do, but that's what makes it so much fun to talk to her about it. But as I write romance and YA and horror comedy spoofs and adult mystery, it has always been part of my master plan to have different pen names associated with the different genres or potentially the different publishing paths that I would like to take. And for a long time, at least a year now, maybe longer, I've planned to publish first under a name that's not Kate Cavanaugh. And I'm not going to share that until several months after the publication of those stories. And there's a couple reasons for that. First, having an audience on YouTube for my work is a luxury that I never could have accounted for. But also, most of my audience is other writers, and I receive so many wonderful, amazing comments of people asking me when I'll publish because they want to read my work, or people who just like the genres that I write in because they too write in them and read in them, and yeah. But one of my favorite things about having other writers as my audience is that we really get to empathize with each other and learn from each other, and it's a totally different dynamic than just author-reader. All that's to say that ultimately my YouTube audience is not my book audience. I don't want it to be the end-all be-all of my book audience. I've seen a lot of self-published authors on YouTube try things in a variety of ways, but the biggest lesson I've learned is the importance of having an audience of readers in your genre that are not at all associated with your channel. The second reason for this, also selfishly, because y'all know I love stats, allows me the freedom to publish, play around with the numbers, test out ads, manipulate my copy, and learn and see what works, and then let y'all know and see if that changes anything too. I think it's going to be super interesting, and it's just also something that I'm probably not going to talk about on this channel for a while. So what I'm saying is, I know I'm going to publish this year. I also know it's not going to be under Kate Cavanaugh. I'm still hopeful for next year though regarding the Meridian Maps, the first book, and I do have a goal to publish those on a regular schedule. So once the first book drops, I'm hoping, at one point I was thinking it would be 3 months, maybe 4 months or 6 months is more likely, but who knows? But I would like to do it on a regular schedule until I get all 5 books out. Holy crap. But looking at this chart, and the big thing that I've been sort of personally internalizing when I think about being a hybrid author is what I want to do with these standalone YA novels that I do want to query at some point. Because self-publishing is entirely on my timeline, and because I get to set the schedule, I've really moved my priority on those up, which means that things like Project Purple and even Project Death and the book that I was working on during the 24-hour write-a-thon have really been bumped down on my priority list. I don't know that that's for the best, and maybe that should change when I'm thinking about, you know, the 3 projects I'm allowing myself to focus on at any given time. It's just deciding how to prioritize stuff. And a quick summary of my strategy regarding things like Project Purple or the YA contemporaries is like the stylistic choice for all of the books to be like journal or like the main characters writing the book or whatever, and then I can kind of branch off not just from YA contemporary but also the YA sci-fi that I've worked on at one point that I didn't list, and the YA zombie story I've had in my head for a really long time, and whatever, you know, just like making a brand within the YA world using that voice. Anyways, but again, that has shuffled down, and my priority as the self-publishing, the thing that I totally get to plan the timeline of, has sort of bumped up. And all of this is to say, I get why everyone's confused. I get why there have been so many questions. This is not the first graph that I have drawn out when I'm trying to make 2020 plans or 2021 or even 2022 plans, okay? Like, I get it. But I imagine that this is all going to continue to shuffle around more as I learn more, as I gain skills, as I gain confidence. I'm hoping to make a lasting career out of this. And if I think the best way to do that, fears, skill set, audience, business decisions, everything taken into account, takes me a little bit longer, well, then it just takes me a little bit longer. Hopefully I have the rest of my life to continue writing and publishing. It's not a race, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned this year and continue to learn with my goal of being kind to myself. So please do comment down below. Let me know if you plan to write in multiple genres. Let me know if you want to take on multiple pen names, or why you think that's a good idea or a bad idea for you personally, or just generally. Let me know if your publishing path or plans have changed over the years. And let me know if there's a story that you keep coming back to as your skills develop more and more, a la my Scooby-Doo meets Princess Bride story. But thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you especially to some of my new patrons this month: Toby Medeiros, Billy Olari, Gorinda Capper, Fixie Des, and Caleb O'Leary, and I will see y'all all very soon with a new video. Bye! Oh no.